Welcome to our Sunday gathering this afternoon. And we're going to begin officially when we light our candle together. This has become something that I really love to do. So if you've got a candle with you that you'd like to light, or you have one lit already, that's also fine. We're going to take a few moments to light our candles and share them with each other. How are we doing? Oh, look, we've got some candles. Oh, Anna's lighting hers. I think it's wonderful how we've all got such different candles. Mind you, Peter and Sally's, yours are practically, it looks like they're identical. You've been to the same source. But just like we're unique and we have our own light that we shine in our own wonderful way, the candles that we show also are the same, unique to us and yet equally important. So let's take a moment just to look at the screen and see the candles that are there, and the light that it represents as the outward symbol of the inner light that we are. And it's important to recognize our light, and it's important to recognize each other's light, because we all bring our light to share. And as we shine our lights, we help others shine theirs. So bless you. Thank you for bringing your light to our gathering this afternoon. I'm going to put mine behind me by my plant, and then we'll go on with the service. So let's go into some quiet time together. We always like to begin with prayer. So we have our invocation that's in the program, and we'll speak that together, and then we'll go into some quiet time. So let's speak it together. I am now in the presence of pure being, immersed in the Holy Spirit of life, love, and wisdom. I acknowledge your presence and power, O Blessed Spirit. In your divine wisdom, now erase my mortal limitations, and from your pure substance of love, bring into manifestation my world according to your perfect law. So let's take a moment to close our eyes, to get quiet and still, and feel into this now moment, this holy moment, where all of God is. With every breath, let us go deeper, deeper into the divine, deeper into ourselves, deeper into God, deeper where all merges as one. And take a moment to simply rest in the knowing of our oneness with God, with ourselves, for each other, for a few moments of silent connection and prayer. And let's take a moment to remember our loved ones and our communities, where we are, where we live, and the greater community that is our world. And draw all of that into this knowing of the light that we all are. This light that shines within us, whether we know it or not. And take a moment to honor the light within all people everywhere. And so we say thank you for the light that is always here, the light that the candle represents, the light that is never put out and never dimmed, the light that we are. Amen. And in part because it's Father's Day, and the knowing of the Lord being Father to Jesus, his Papa, that personal, deep personal relationship that Jesus had with God. We're going to read the Lord's Prayer, which Paul will put up on the screen, and we're going to do it in two versions. We're doing it in the original version that we received it in this country after the Latin, which is in the King James Version. And thereafter that, we're going to read it in a translated form from the original Aramaic that Jesus would have spoken into English. So it's not gone through Greek or Latin or any other language. And apparently in Aramaic, it's a very descriptive language. And there are many ways that we can translate the Aramaic reading of the Lord's Prayer. So I have one version for us, which we will get to after this. But let's together say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. And so that was the version that I was brought up with from going to church, the version that I go to automatically whenever the Lord's Prayer is said. But Paul's going to put up this alternative description for us. And this is taken from Prayers of the Cosmos, written by Neil Douglas Klotz, who translated the Lord's Prayer from Aramaic into English. And we are going to read this now together. O Bertha, Father, Mother of the Cosmos, you create all that moves in light. Focus your light within us. Make it useful, as the rays of a beacon show the way. Create your reign of unity now through our fiery hearts and willing hands. Your one desire then acts with ours, as in all light, so in all forms. Grant what we need each day in bread and insight, subsidence for the call of growing life. Loose the cords of mistakes binding us, as we release the strands we hold of others' guilt. Don't let surface things delude us, but free us from what holds us back. From you is born all ruling will, the power and life to do the song that beautifies all. From age to age, it renews. So very poetic, very descriptive, very much along that energy of the way the Arabs express themselves, the Aramaic language. So we're going to go to the daily word, and Paul has the daily word reading for today, which is obviously going to be all about Father's Day. So Paul, I'm going to hand over to you.
So today's is about Father's blessing. And the affirmation is, I give thanks for all expressions of fatherly love. My relationship with my father may have been positive and nurturing, or difficult and challenging. He may have been a strong presence during my childhood, or he may have been absent. We may be part of each other's lives today. We may be estranged, or he may have passed from earthly life. Whatever our circumstances, I bless my Father, and I see him enfolded in divine love. As I honour my Father, I also honour all the father figures who have helped guide me along my path. Family members, teachers, neighbours, clergy, employers and friends. I bless them as I recall all the ways each one, in a unique way, has modelled strength, guidance, wisdom and patience. Their presence remains with me thanks to their gifts of fatherly love. And from Proverbs, I have taught you the way of wisdom. I have led you in the paths of uprightness. Now that comes from probably one of the Christian translations of the Bible, but a good friend of mine gave me a copy of the version of the Bible that the Hebrews use, the Hebrew Bible as used by the Jewish faith. And the translation there is slightly different. It says, I instruct you in the way of wisdom, I guide you in straight courses. It's actually quite nice because if you look at the version in Daily Word, it's a past tense, whereas the one in the Jewish Bible is in the present tense. And I think that's rather wonderful that it makes it more relevant to today. It's about being in the now, about what is happening in the now. And the second part of it, where it says, I guide you in straight courses. Proverbs makes a big thing about straight versus crooked. Straight being the path. We can perhaps think of it in terms of Eric Butterworth and his flow process, how everything is a flow coming through us. The more straight the path, the easier life is, the more we are attuned with the Christ within us, as opposed to the crooked.
Over to you, Ken. So thank you very much. We're anticipating your time with us now very much.
Thank you, Kimmery. Hello, everyone. It's just lovely to see you. But I'm very conscious that we can't really do a tele-hug. And so to anyone who is hurting or worried or not at ease, I want to try and send a big kiss and a hug now this afternoon. The beauty about this, of course, is that you can be wearing your pajamas. You can go and make a cup of tea if you like. You can smoke a big cigar. One thing you can't do is like the old music halls. You cannot throw soft fruit at the speaker, which is just as well, because it's a bit of a disaster. If I'd known it was Father's Day, I have a nice speech I've given on Father's Day in the past. A few nice jokes. It's all very sweet and nice. Somehow we've ended up with reality. You know, for at least 3,000 years, wise men and women have spent their lives trying to debate what is real, what is it all about here? And we've got 15 minutes to try and fill in all the philosophers, all the scientists, all the religious movements. So here goes at high speed. Are you all ready? Relax, close your eyes, try not to fall off your chair if you can, but otherwise do exactly as you wish. We'll start by the usual Unity disclaimer. Like David Davenport said, they taught him at Unity Village, 50% of what we've taught you is probably wrong, and we don't know which 50%. But we don't care, do we? Because we reserve the right to change our minds anyway. We may have new data tomorrow. Now, we'll start with philosophy, and you always have to mention Socrates, because he's like Jesus to the philosophers. You start with him. And I have a cartoon of a father speaking to his little boy, a 10-year-old, and saying, the great philosopher Socrates said, I am the wisest man in the world because I know one thing. And that thing is that I know nothing. And the little boy thinks about it for a moment and he says, if he doesn't know anything, who taught him that one thing? And his father said, well, I expect it was his wife told him. So I don't know as much as Socrates. So, but even before Socrates, there are two people I'll mention. One is a man called Parmenides, and he is thought to be the very first metaphysician or ontologist, where he says, and his view was that all is one. There is only God, or nature, he calls him too. So that idea of unities goes back a very long way. The other one that should be mentioned is our friend Pythagoras, who said, it is amazing what we don't know why it should be so, but if you measure or weigh or count things in nature, somehow mathematics can explain their behavior and predict things. Don't know why it should be, but the movement of the planets, the growth of plants, the spread of diseases, it can all be done mathematically. So let's just bear those two in mind as we move on. Socrates left things in a bit of chaos because he had two disciples, Plato and Aristotle, and it's often said that all of philosophy is just a footnote to Plato and Aristotle. Plato's on our side. He said, the chair you're sitting on is not a real chair. The real chair is perfect, never changes, never decays, and it is somewhere, let's say, in a spirit world. And what you see and what you sit on and what you eat and what you talk about is just a copy. It's a shadow. It's a dream. That idea, let's move forward and come back to Aristotle later, but that idea crops up again and again. There's a big gap when Christianity comes into Europe, a bit muddled because I won't go on to it, but you've got this conflict between the Judaism where God made the world and said it was good, and Jesus, and particularly Paul, who says, be not of the world's a bit of a mess and we will overcome it. But let's come on right up to modern times, and that idea still is there and circulates. And I'll mention just two people because they're slightly interesting and get a bit of a laugh. One is Spinoza, Benedict Spinoza, who lived in Portugal but escaped to Amsterdam. Lovely, lovely man. And he said, there is only one thing. He could have been Emily Cady's dad, really. He said, there is only one thing, which is God. All else is a concept, is a mirage. So naturally, they hated him. But he was a humble man. Now, on the contrary, about 70 or 80 years later, there's a chap called George Berkeley. He lived in London, but he was an Irishman and went back to Ireland. Now, George Berkeley said almost the same thing. He said, everything you see and believe and live in is a mental construct. Only God is real. I'm not quite sure that either of them had the unity idea that we are expressions of God and can draw on all that power. But Berkeley also said, everything is imaginary. Now, he was not hated. In fact, he was made a fellow of Trinity College, Dublin. I think he was made a bishop. And his name was taken by one of the best universities in the world, University of California, Berkeley campus is named after George Berkeley, or Berkeley they probably call it over there, I don't know. So a man greatly honoured and respected. So it just goes to show that you take the rough with the smooth in this game. Anyway, let's go back to the other side of the picture. Aristotle was a rather more pragmatic sort of man. He said, never mind all that airy-fairy stuff. Let's deal with what we can see and the world we have to live in. And he was a great scientist, a great cataloguer and analyzer of the natural world and of the physical phenomena around us that we are familiar with. He disappeared for many hundreds of years, but the Arabs, thankfully, kept his translation of his writing. which reappeared in the Christian world, translated from Arabic in the Middle Ages, and led to the great progress in science of experimental verification. Let me just say, as a scientist myself, let me just point out, you will say, this is obvious, Ken, oh, shut up. But some people have a misconception that scientists prove things, and they don't. Mathematicians can prove things. If a formula works in maths, it works forever. But scientists look at what's going on and make a guess as to why it works, and try and put that into maths if they can. And if then they try with experiments to prove that it's wrong. Experiments are there to disprove theories. And if a hypothesis becomes difficult to disprove, it becomes a theory. And if nobody can disprove it after many tests, it becomes a law of nature. And that is considered to be the absolute truth until it always gets thrown out. It always turns out to be wrong. The classic case is the planets. You know, obviously the sun goes around the Earth, and that's considered gospel for a long time. And then somebody works out that the positions are better if the Earth goes around the sun in a circle, and then that's not quite right, so it's an ellipse, and then so on. And Newton formulated that in mathematics, and those were Newton's laws applied until the beginning of the last century, when Einstein came along and said the things that don't quite work in Newton's laws, like the orbit of the planet Mercury, I've got an explanation for. And Einstein's formula have been tested and tested and tested, and so far have continued to work. At the same time, or in the 1920s, people looking at waves, at electricity and at light and other things, said the atoms, which, by the way, Democritus and ancient Greece had proposed, have bits inside them, but they are spooky. And this is very difficult to explain, even if we had all day. I have a book here, which I recommend. It's called Reality is Not What You Think It Is, by a great physicist called Carlo Rovelli. And he says, let me just read it to him. He says, when they discovered the electron, they found that an electron can only exist in certain conditions and not in others. In between, it disappears and does not exist. It's like it could live on the ground floor of this house or on the first floor, but you will never find it on the stairs. It can only be here or higher up. It can never be in between. And that jump between is called a quantum. And it's misused a lot, but anyway, that's what a quantum is. So quantum mechanics has become the most tested and experimented theory in the history of science because nobody likes it. It's very weird. It turns out that these little particles that make up atoms or make up light can be in two places at once, or they can go in two different ways and come together and be different. I had a friend called Graham, and he was an identical twin. And Graham said to me, he said, I live in London and my twin, can't remember his name, John, let's say, he lives up north. And we hardly ever speak to one another. But I always know if there's something going on with John. And he said, and this week I've had really terrible stomach pains. So I phoned him up and he says, yes, I'm having an operation day after tomorrow for a gastric ulcer. And he said that happens again and again. Well, it turns out that these little bits of atoms are like that as well. One of them can be here on Earth and another can be millions of miles away, not just 200 miles up north. And if you do something to one of them, the other reacts. And everyone for ages has said there must be something we don't understand. There must be some physics at a different level. I take a magazine called The New Scientist, which is serious. It doesn't print. Everything that's in it has been checked by others and so on. And I showed Paul last year. They printed this: reality, the greatest illusion of all. And up until the virus, they've continued every few weeks to put out new things about how not only is quantum mechanics difficult to understand and raises questions about what is real and what isn't, it's also inconsistent. You can have things which turn out to be paradoxes. Here is a headline of the front page of that magazine in May. So right in the middle of the virus, they're saying, is the universe conscious? It sounds implausible until you do the maths. So maths, and then here's last week's 6th of June, our unbelievable universe. And the article in there says, is reality a simulation? Are we living in a computer simulation? The question you used to ask people in philosophy was, how do you know if you are not a brain in a tank? The answer, of course, is you don't really know, depending on who put you there and what they're measuring. If they're benevolent and kind and pretty clever, you wouldn't know. Excuse me. But of course, now you wouldn't be a brain in a tank, you would be a figure in one of those computer games. There is some kind of a convergence between thinkers about, in the mind, about the nature of reality, and people who are trained in physical experimentation. So those are the philosophers and the scientists. What about religions? They're the third branch of inquiry, I suppose. I suppose really the daddy of them all, or the mummy of them all, for me are the Eastern religions. The Hindus and the Jains and the Buddhists have always said, all is Maya, all is illusion. We live in a world of illusion, and our goal is to escape from it, to awaken through a whole succession of lives where we learn new lessons to achieve moksha, is it called? Is that the right word? The idea that there is a higher reality, that what we see and do on a day-to-day basis is not the whole story, is getting near to the idea that we have in unity, that only God is real. Only God, whatever we mean by that, is real, and that somehow our perception is very limited and blinkered, and we progress by removing those blinkers, awakening to that reality, and the rewards for doing so are immense. I did wonder whether to bring a little recording of I do this Buddhist mantra sometimes, the metta of loving kindness, and always they preface it by saying why we do it. And they say, it relieves from us the bondage of self and fear. Our sleep is more peaceful. Our dreams are beautiful. Other people, men and women, love us. Children and animals are drawn to us. Angels and devas protect us. There are people, we probably know some of them, who've had sudden awakenings like the Apostle Paul, or at least rapid awakenings. For most of us, it's a gradual educational process. an awakening, just like the Buddha did, just like Jesus is supposed to have had during his baptism by John or his time in the desert. William James is reckoned to be the best, by some, to be the best philosopher that America has produced. And that book, The Varieties of Religious Experience, is actually 20 lectures which he gave in Edinburgh in 1900. But what I didn't realize when I first went into that is that William James's godfather was Ralph Waldo Emerson. He's one of ours. And in this very last lecture, he says, look, I've been talking about other people's experiences, not my own, but I keep being nagged at to say what I believe. And he says, what I believe, he's talked about what he calls the split mind. He's a psychologist. And he says, what I believe is in the healing process. And there is a movement which I call Mind Heal. But they are calling themselves now New Thought. So he was advertising the metaphysical and transcendental movements of which unity is a part 100 years ago. And so I like him for that reason. This awakening process to a greater reality that comes to us, through us, and yet is linked to the whole of existence, to the world or the creation beyond the world, to what is, to what exists, as opposed to what is just an image. That is also, of course, the entire message of A Course in Miracles, which many of you will have read. And I want to finish just by saying that sort of race through things like that comes back to the normal question. Well, thank you very much. Let's spend a little bit of the afternoon. What am I supposed to do about it? And it will come as no shock to you that I think the answer is prayer. But you know, there are 58 different books in Unity on prayer. What can I add? Nothing. Less than Socrates even. So I will do in my own little acronym, and I will take the letters of prayer, pray, and fit some words to them, just so that if you remember anything at all about this afternoon, you might just remember P-R-A-Y. And for P, I'm going to say persist. Why? Because A Course in Miracles talks about doing a spiritual exercise every hour of the day. There is an exercise for each day of the week, 365 exercises, and they are all obvious but difficult, and persisting is key. I'm going to say for R, relax. So Fox says continue, 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 but relax. There is no hurry. Oh, says someone, in my case, there's the most urgent hurry. If I don't demonstrate by Saturday, the court will decide against me, or my creditors will foreclose. There is no hurry. Let evil do its worst on Saturday. Let the court give its verdict. Let the creditors strike their blow. Let the boat sail. When Monday comes, prayer will still put everything right. If not on Monday, then Wednesday or Friday or the week after next. But all is all right. All is well. And my word for the A of pray is accept. My experience is that the more I am able to repeat or come back to my spiritual practice, and the more I can let go and let God and accept whatever transpires, then a solution comes or a gift comes. Little signs come which say, hang in there, things are all right, God is on its way, if I can put it that way. And the why of pray is for the yoga of love, which again is a Emmett Fox thing. And what he says is this: the ways to God in Hinduism, they talk about 4 paths, 4 yogas. Some of you may be much more familiar with this than I am, but there is the yoga of knowledge, which many people think that's their thing, the mental, rational way of arriving at God. There is the yoga of service, of action, and that for many people is a wonderful path to follow. But the Hindus say, yes, but when you get there, you'll find it's still not enough. There's a yoga of devotion or worship. But Emmett Fox says the Raja Yoga is the yoga of love. And so we relax, we accept what we experience as part of the path, and we love. We love ourselves and we love others. Prayer is an awareness of that which is by seeing it, not by making it so. That is more than enough for me. Let's take a moment to be still. Could we do that? Could we together close our eyes? Together take a deep breath. And together relax. Letting the breath come slowly, breathing in peace, breathing out all thoughts of what should be, what might be, what could be. And listen for these words from A Course in Miracles. Simply do this. Be still and lay aside all thoughts of what you are and what God is. All concepts you have learned about the world, all images you hold about yourself. Let them go. Empty your mind of everything that it thinks is either true or false, or good or bad, of every thought that it judges worthy, and all the ideas of which it is ashamed. Hold on to nothing. Do not bring with you one thought that the past has taught you, nor one belief you ever learned before from anything. Forget this world. Forget this course. Forget this service. Come with wholly empty arms to meet your God. And so it is. Amen.
Thank you. Bless you. So, well, that's a lot to take in. I think we will start drawing our service to a close. And I'm going to do it by reminding us all about the key message of today, really, of what Ken's been sharing, of what Paul talked about, that we are divine, that there's nothing you have to strive for or become. You are divine as you are right now. It's simply releasing everything, emptying your mind of all those thoughts, releasing all that's in the way. And we know who we are. We know who we all are. I'm going to invite us, with all that we've heard today, to speak our closing prayer, the prayer for protection. And we have our I am statements in there, that I am being the part, that divine that you are. The divine in you is all these qualities. So let's speak this closing prayer, the prayer for protection, with heart and mind and soul together. The light of
God surrounds me. I am light. The love of God enfolds me. I am love. The power of God protects me. I am power. The presence of God watches over me. I am present. Wherever I am, God is, and all well.
So may you all go from here knowing that you are divine, that we empty our minds and hearts of what we think we know to become what we truly are, and that all these qualities of God, love, light, power, presence, are our qualities to claim, to use, to know, and to share.